Hey everybody. The next theme I want to address in Twelfth Night is the theme of gender and sexual fluidity, which absolutely permeates, saturates this play. There's so much to talk about, but I'm going to do my best to keep things concise. Okay, our first example is the relationship between Orsino and Viola, who's in disguise as Cesario. There's a very interesting kind of romantic erotic tension between them that seems to have very homoerotic elements to it. So even in Act 1, Scene 4, and you can watch this scene at this time-stamped mark on the Globe production, we already see Orsino establishing a high degree of intimacy with his man, Cesario. He says, Cesario, thou knowest no less, but all. I have unclasped to thee the book even of my secret soul. Therefore, good youth, address thy gate unto her, unto Olivia. Be not denied access. Stand at her doors and tell them, there thy fixed foot shall grow till thou have audience. So Orsino's already talking about how he has unclasped to Cesario every element of his secret soul. That's pretty intimate. It continues over in this other passage from this same Act 1, Scene 4. Oh, then unfold the passion of my love, surprise her with discourse of my dear faith. It shall become thee well to act my woes. She will attend it better in thy youth than in a nuncio's of more grave aspect. A nuncio is a messenger. Viola says, I think not so, my lord. Orsino says, dear lad, believe it. For they shall yet belie thy happy years that say thou art a man. Diana's lip is not more smooth and rubious. Thy small pipe is as the maiden's organ, shrill and sound. And all is semblative a woman's part. I know thy constellation is right apt for this affair. Okay, we have a lot of gender fluidity here because Orsino is saying, oh, Cesario, you'd be a really effective person to woo Olivia because you have so many womanly attributes. You have a lip like Diana. You have a small pipe. Your voice is very high, shrill and sound. And all is semblative, a woman's part. There's so much about you that looks like a woman. Remember though, Orsino doesn't think that Cesario is a woman. He's just saying Cesario, the man, has many womanly qualities. And that's precisely what Orsino thinks will make Cesario an A-plus wooer of Olivia. So there's a lot of really interesting, I suppose, androgynous perceptions that Orsino has of Cesario, and perhaps Olivia also has of Cesario, that makes Cesario even more attractive to both of them. It's precisely Cesario's kind of both gendered nature, being womanly and manly all at the same time, that seems to really attract the attention of both Orsino and Olivia. We're going to come back to Cesario in a second, but we're going to take a quick detour to talk about a much even less, we could say less complicated homoerotic element in this play, which is Sebastian and Antonio. I say less complicated because there's no cross-dressing. During multiple points in this play, Antonio seems to voice his love for Sebastian. Sebastian never seems to return it in very plain form, but we hear it multiple times from Antonio. In Act 2, Scene 1, and you can see this at this timestamp in the Globe, Sebastian says, if you will not murder me for my love, let me be your servant. In Act 3, Scene 3, Antonio says, my desire more sharp than filed steel did spur me forth. Okay, let's just think about this metaphor that's coming through about his desire. It's sharp like filed steel. There's an undeniable, I suppose, phallic connotation to that image of Antonio's sharp desire. Further, in that scene, Antonio gives Sebastian his purse. He says, take my purse. And of course, a purse is a wallet. It contains money, but it is also early modern slang for the scrotum. Now, I know you're all thinking, I did not need to know that much about early modern language. You crossed a line there. I didn't need to know that. But I study a lot about early modern sexual practices, so I couldn't help but fill you in on that. Later on in the play, in Act 5, Scene 1, as we pause to wait for this bar to go away, his life I gave him and did thereto add my love. That's Antonio again. So throughout this play, Antonio voices a kind of one-sided, unrequited love for Sebastian, which I suppose ties back into our interest in Petrarchanism. We have another instance of unrequited love, but here in a very plainly homoerotic context. It in fact seems to remind us of the sonnets, in which the sonnets addressed a male love interest for the vast majority of those sonnets. Okay, now, third and final artifact on this theme. We go back to Viola Cesario as he and she are desired by Orsino and Olivia. This really comes to a head in the final act and scene of this play, Act 5, Scene 1. Orsino and Olivia increasingly quarrel over Cesario and Viola. Of course, this is aided by Sebastian's presence in the play, who they all think is Cesario. Tensions rise to the point of Orsino threatening to kill Cesario, Viola, which seems very much a kind of crime of passion. He's so upset with Cesario for marrying Olivia, at least that's what he thinks at this point, that he wants to kill Cesario. This seems very much motivated by his own passion for Cesario himself. And these are the lines where you can see that. Of course, ultimately, this gets resolved by the visual, instantaneous revelation of Sebastian. And we realize that they're twins. Viola and Sebastian are twins. And it's interesting how this plays out from this point, because once Cesario, this desired figure by both men and women, is split up into Sebastian and Viola, it's as if these twins solve the queer love triangle, and they divide up this pansexual, pangendered Cesario into the appropriate genders for Orsino and Olivia, rearranging both the threesome between Orsino, Olivia, and Cesario, and rearranging the homoeroticism into heterosexual formulations. You know, we have Orsino with Viola and Sebastian with Olivia. So in some ways, all of that queer energy seems to dissipate. And yet, despite this revelation, Orsino still enjoys calling Viola a boy. See line 265 in particular. And although they are together, we never see Viola return to her woman's weeds, as Orsino puts it, or her woman's clothing. We only see her in her boy clothes until the very end of the play. And finally, let's not forget that this is a cross-dressing theater company. So even at the end of the day, we have Orsino with Viola, who is a boy actor, and Sebastian with Olivia, who is a boy actor. So if we take off all the costumes, we still have two men and two men together at the end of this play. So my question for you on this theme is, do you think that this play ultimately celebrates sexual fluidity? Does early modern drama, Shakespeare's drama, just ultimately always celebrate it based on the conventions of the theater company itself? Or does it ensure that, such sexual fluidity is a phase that kind of goes away at the end of this play? I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on this question.